it is time to review a film where the past can be a trigger.
Yo, dudes, the Empire's pretty chill. Maybe you could, join it or something.
Hey everyone, Lucimus Prime here, so it is time for another movie review today, and today it's going to be a brand new movie review for a film that released this year, and this film was one of my most anticipated films of this year because it's part of probably my favourite action thriller franchise of all time, which is the John Wick franchise, and this film is a spin-off taking place in between John Wick Chapter 3 and Chapter 4, and of course it is none other than this year's From the World of John Wick, Ballerina. So, now, how was this film made then? So, development of this film as a prequel began in the early 2020s, and it was then announced to be directed by Len Wiseman, and was starring Ana de Armas in the title role as the ballerina herself, originally called Rooney, as based on a character portrayed in Chapter 3 of John Wick. However, the trailers for the film reveal the character is actually called Eve Macaro. And filming, of course, took place in 2022 and 2023, with also reshoots taking place the following year as well. However, after test screenings for the film, Chad Stahelski, who directed, of course, the 4 John Wick movies, was brought on to direct reshoots to film action scenes, which resulted in the film being delayed for a year. It was supposed to be released in June 2024 last year, but then got postponed to release a year later in June 2025. Because when the audiences saw the film in test screenings, the reception was unfortunately negative, which I was actually very surprised about because, as you guys may know, I absolutely love the John Wick films, the 4 of them, and also the show, which is about the Continental, which is from the world of John Wick, the Continental, which is a great show. So I was very surprised about this, and when I heard that Chad was being brought on to film new action scenes, I was actually pretty pleased because obviously, of course, Chad Stahelski is awesome at directing action scenes, such as, for example, in the John Wick films, and he, of course, is also a stuntman, so he definitely knows the ins and outs of doing action scenes, absolutely. And so he, of course, filmed the new scenes, and they also brought back Tyler Bates to compose the music for this film, who composed the music for the John Wick movies. After the score, I believe, was composed by Marco Beltrami, if I remember correctly, I think it was Marco Beltrami. But they replaced him with Tyler Bates, who came out to compose the music after he did it for John Wick movies. The film was then finally completed and released in June 2025, and I finally got on to watching it recently, and I'm here to share my thoughts on it. Now, coming from somebody who absolutely loves the John Wick movies and the Continental TV show, I was really intrigued to see this after I saw a trailer. I was definitely really keen to check it out. And when I saw the film, when it comes to what I think of it, I will say that in my opinion, the film is good, but I would regard it as the weakest out of the whole franchise so far. It's still a good film in my opinion. It does have good moments, but unfortunately some bad moments too. But it's still, in my opinion, good and not like a bad film by any means. So, what is the movie about then? So, as I said, this film, of course, takes place in between the events of John Wick Chapter 3 and Chapter 4, and it follows the ballerina herself called Eve Macaro, who is a trained assassin in the Ruska Roma, and she's seeking revenge for the death of her family. So, it sounds like a really cool plot, doesn't it? Like a really cool revenge story. So, when it comes to what I think is good about this film then, so, for starters, I think the film has a very good cast of actors. So, for example, of course, Ana de Armas, of course, plays the title character Eve Macaro, the ballerina herself, and I think she did a really good job playing Eve in this film. Obviously, of course, Eve is no near as good of a character as John Wick when it comes to comparing the characters, but I think Ana de Armas did a really good job playing the character in this film, and I think the action scenes involving her were also really good as well, and also very authentic because she actually also ended up using a real flamethrower in this film, which I was pretty surprised, but I didn't think it'd be a real one, but wow, she actually used a real one. And the action scene involving her character were also well choreographed, and I think she did a really good job playing the character, but still doesn't compare to John Wick, well, definitely not. And when it comes to other characters as well, there's a really good supporting cast. Many of them are returning faces from the John Wick films, and also some new ones too. So when it comes to the new faces in this film, I definitely liked the villain of this film, who is called the Chancellor, played by Gabriel Byrne. I think he was good as him in the film. Quite compelling, I must say, but slightly weaker when compared to the villains from the John Wick films. Like, obviously, in my opinion, he will definitely not come anywhere close to Viggo Tarasov from the first movie or any of us from the other films, but he was still a good villain, but I'm not going to deny that. And I also, as well, like the addition as well of Norman Reedus as the assassin called Daniel Pine in this film. Norman Reedus, I think he's an awesome guy. Love him in The Walking Dead and other things he's been into as well. So I was definitely really intrigued to see him in this film, of course, as Daniel Pine. And I think in these scenes he played him really well and did a really good job playing him. And also, as well, when it comes as well to returning faces, I also love the return of Angelica Houston as the director of Aruska Roma in this film. I think she's a great actress. I loved her character in John Wick Chapter 3. And it was really cool to see her return in this film. And once again, she played her really well. That's definitely one of her awards of Angelica Houston of all time. And I also as well love the addition of Ian McShane reprising his role as Winston Scott, who's the manager of the New York Continental Hotel. As always, he does a brilliant job playing Winston in this film and continues to make him a likeable, mysterious character as always. That's definitely a role of his to this day, and he played him so well in this film. And I love how they gave him a role in which he's part of the upbringing of Eve, because he introduces, of course, to the ballerinas in the Aruska Roma. So I really love how he did that with his character in this film. And speaking of a Continental as well, I also definitely really love the return of the absolute legend Lance Reddick, may he rest in peace, as the concierge Sharon. Sadly, this was Lance Reddick's final film because he unfortunately, of course, passed away 2 years ago, literally around the time John Wick Chapter 4 released, which was really heartbreaking. And so I was definitely wanting to see his film because it's his final film and I wanted to pay my respects to him. And even though he only appeared in like about 3 scenes in this film, it was really great to see him doing his amazing job as the concierge of the hotel and made him a mysterious, cool character as always. And that's definitely for all Lance Reddick to this day, absolutely. And may Lance Reddick rest in peace. And when it comes to returning faces and who I would definitely say is obviously the #1 best part of this film, it's definitely for me the return of John Wick himself, with Keanu Reeves reprising his role, my favourite actor of all time. Seeing him come back as John Wick was definitely really amazing to see. And what I really appreciate about this film is it preserved how awesome he is as a character, even though, of course, Chad Stahelski didn't direct this movie. Because when it comes to preparing for this film, I anticipated that John Wick wouldn't appear in it much because this isn't his film. It's about, of course, the ballerina this time, not about John. But when it comes to the scenes John is in, they are definitely really worth the watch, 100%. I mean, he appears at the beginning where he of course, meets Eve during the events of Chapter 3. After, of course, he gets branded in the Aruska Roma, he meets Eve. Then he appears later on where he's been hired to execute her. And when it comes to how they preserved his awesomeness as a character, they do this because he's able to defeat Eve. So they didn't make her like better than John Wick or anything like that. So the film didn't go all that route, thankfully. They preserved how awesome he is as a character and how brilliant of a fighter he is. So he's able, of course, to defeat Eve. And he also gets to help her out as well, of course, as using a sniper rifle. And we see him taking out a henchman. And it was just so badass once again. Like, John Wick is absolutely awesome, wiping the floor of the enemies in this film. Definitely worth a watch. And Keanu Reeves, as always, does a brilliant job playing Mr. Wick. Always has done. And it was really cool to see him. And when it comes to Wick's appearance in this film, of course, as well, I'm actually really glad this film is a prequel to Chapter 4, because as you guys will know, if you've seen the ending of Chapter 4, of course, John's appearance in this film would contradict the ending of Chapter 4 if this film took place after it. So I'm actually really glad that Ballerina takes place before Chapter 4, so it can allow us to include John and not mess up the timeline of the films, thankfully. So I think they did a really good job making it a prequel instead of course, a sequel to John Wick Chapter 4. And when it comes to action scenes themselves, they might not be as good, in my opinion, as the action scenes in the John Wick films, because in my opinion, those scenes are one of a kind, but I think the action scenes, for what were actually really fun in this film and really well choreographed. Like, I liked the fight scene at Prague Continental Hotel, and also, as well, of course, the fight in Austrian town of Hallstatt, which is entirely full of assassins working for the Chancellor. And of course, seeing Mr. Wick back in action, fighting, of course, Eve, and also helping her with his sniper rifle, and also, as well, taking down the henchman, was just so amazing to see in this film. So, for what it's worth, the film has really good action scenes, and there's also as well really good music composed by Tyler Bates in this film, just like he's done for the other John Wick films, which is great to listen to. And such as, especially bringing back John's theme when he appears, which was great to listen to, definitely. And also, as well, when it comes to visual and CGI, I think it's also good in this film as well, too. And the film also does have some brutal moments, like some exploding characters. I'm not kidding, but actually characters explode from, like, explosives, which was actually pretty shocking to see. Didn't even go that route, but we did. And it's definitely, in my opinion, really good to watch. Definitely when it comes to, you know, the good visuals as well. And, I mean, as well as, of course, all this as well, I think the story is also interesting because it introduces more to the lore of a franchise as well, because the John Wick franchise's lore has really interested me a lot, such as introducing the criminal underworld, and I think it's really fascinating, so I like how someone introduces more of the lore to it, really. However, if I was to think about quality with this film, there's a few that I will say. So, one example of which, of course, is when it comes to screen time for the characters. I've already mentioned that Sharon, for example, only appears in about 3 scenes, because even though it was great to see Lance Reddick appear as Sharon one last time, I wish he had more scenes in this film, to be completely honest. Especially because when it comes to promoting the film, it was mentioned that he and Winston were supposed to be protecting Eve in the Continental, but we don't really see much of this in the film, sadly. We just see Sharon doing his duty as the concierge. And in addition to that as well, when it comes to Daniel Pine, while I of course love the addition of Norman Reedus in the film as Daniel Pine, I didn't like how he only appears in like 2 scenes in this film, which I was really confused by because I thought he was going to play a big part of the film, but for some reason he didn't. He only appeared in a few scenes because while his fight scene in Prague was good, I didn't like how he gets captured and defeated and kidnapped, and we don't see him again until the end of the film, so that was definitely, in my opinion, quite silly how they kind of wasted on Reedus' talent like that, because he's a great actor. And when it comes as well to as all inconsistencies, there's one with regards to Winston. Now, it's not the character himself, because the character as always is likeable, mysterious, and Ian McShane did a great job playing him. It's his hair. Because if you guys see this film, you'll notice that he's got short hair in his scenes, of course, where he interacts with Eve, which is confusing because in chapter 3 and 4 of John Wick, he's got long hair. And this one's supposed to take place in between them, so how come he's got short hair? That's pretty weird, isn't it? They never even confirm how long it takes from chapter 4 to happen after chapter 3, do they? So that's just really confusing if you ask me, really. And when it comes to John Wick's appearance towards the end of the film, while it was an awesome scene, probably the best part of the film, I'm not going to deny that it was really awesome to see John come back and be in action once again. It's confusing because John is supposed to be excommunicado, meaning that he can't get any help or services of any kind from the organisations in the underworld, and he can't work for them anymore. So, it's really confusing how he's able to, of course, be hired to assassinate Eve when he's supposed to be, of course, excommunicado on the run from a high table. So, I can see why Chaz Stahelski came back to do reshoots for his films to film more action scenes for it, because I can probably say that it would have been probably trash if he didn't come back to film more action scenes because of his inconsistencies. But thankfully, thanks to his of course, reshoots for a film, it prevents it from being a bad film. That's what I'll say. But those issues I have with the film, though, are why I say it's probably the weakest of the franchise so far. So, that's my thoughts on From the World of John Wick Ballerina. So, if I was to give this film a score out of 10, I'd probably give this film a very solid score of 7 out of 10. Not the best in the franchise at all, probably the weakest one, but still good in my opinion. So I'd give it a final score of 7 out of 10. So guys, that was me doing my review for 2025's From the World of John Wick Ballerina. So, you know the drill, guys. Be sure to give this video a like. Also, be sure to let me know in the comments what you guys think of From the World of John Wick Ballerina. If you see it, let me know in the comments below what you think of it. Also, be sure to join Team Prime by pressing subscribe and videos coming in the future. And be seeing you.